Welcome to the Bookies Plus weekly betting show where you will get free NFL picks for week 7 from our gambling experts. Now, you'll also find picks at bookies.com/picks. Make sure you bookmark that again, bookies.com/picks. Not just NFL picks, got you covered for just about any sport that you like to wager on. And remember, every Thursday, we are back with a new episode. This week, we have 3 of us, obviously, as you can see. Got Adam, the ATM Thompson, one of the nation's premier handicappers, always over 60% in the win column for his bets. Nick the Whalen, in the industry over a decade. You know him from RotoWire. He does NBA, NFL. You see him on VSiN, DraftKings, guest analyst. I'm Jim Coventry, and we are going to kick right off here. Adam, and you and I like the Patriots. You go ahead and start off, and then I'll pile on.
Yeah, it's not as much liking the Patriots as it is disliking everything the Titans have done, will do, will continue to do, especially without Ridley now. That'll be interesting. And Mike Vrabel returning to the place that canned him since they let him go. They're 4-18. He is building an ascending team in New England. That's 3-0 on the road. They like that. They like that road mentality. And I think they can feast. I think they can feast on this Titans defense that's really poor on each side, running it and passing, and Cam Ward and a new coach trying to keep up. I just don't think that's going to happen. So -6.5, that's a great number. I think if Vrabel has the opportunity, he's going to pour it on. This is a revenge game for him. His young team has his back. So I think they're going to rock and roll. This is a 27-13 kind of feel. And even if they get that garbage touchdown, still 27-20, and we still win.
Yeah, I mean, from a tactical standpoint here, Patriots are good against the run. You know that's what the Titans want to try. It's not going to work. That offensive line is brutal. When then they're going to be in obvious passing situations, and the Patriots have been really good at these simulated pressures. They send players you don't know are coming, and that is not what Cam Ward is ready for. So that's going to be great. And on the other side, Jeffrey Simmons is still a game wrecker, but the Titans are really poor when a quarterback breaks contain and their coverage breaks out quickly. And that's where Drake May thrive. So even on a tactical standpoint, big edge to the Patriots. Nick, you got an over and under for us. And guess what? Chicago and New Orleans, 2 ugly sounding teams. Under 47, what do you got?
Yeah, guys, we went under in the New Orleans game last week. I have no idea how that game ended up going under. We had 38 points in the first half and then somehow 6 after halftime. So we will continue to target this Saints team, which, so much of my handicap last week in Saints Pats was, the Saints don't really hit big plays, which is still true. But of course, first play from scrimmage, 53 yards to Chris Olave. But we saw over the course of 4 quarters why this Saints team continues to be an under team for me. And we're getting this number at 47. They're on the road at the Chicago Bears. Bears have been an over team, by the way. They've hit the over on their team total in all 5 games so far, but they've been gifted 7 turnovers in the last 2 games, in that Vegas game and then the Washington game. And all 7 of those ended up being huge. Of course, all 3 in the Washington game ended up giving the Bears a victory. So I'm still not totally sold on Chicago offensively. I thought the defense actually showed up really well, though, against Washington in a tough spot on the road. We're able to slow down that Commanders running game. Saints have some injuries offensively. Chris Olave has been limited this week. We don't know if Alvin Kamara is going to be out there. They're just a very, very limited offense. They're the lowest scoring first quarter team in the NFL this season. They're getting outscored something like 65-16 in the first quarter. So they're always kind of trying to claw their way back. And again, they just don't hit big plays. So I think with the Saints going on the road here, this could be a spot, where we could see the Bears offense go off, but I just don't expect a lot of scoring on the New Orleans side of things. It's another game where I don't really want to touch the number in terms of the side, 5.5 in favor of Chicago, but I do think we get a lower scoring game. So give me the under 47 in Saints Bears.
Hey, and maybe it helps Dennis Allen's coming back to defensively coach against the team he was a defensive coordinator for. Maybe he wants to stick it to them a little bit further. He knows Spencer Rattler real well, and there's not much to take away, but guess who can take it away? Dennis Allen can. Adam, ready for round 2? You're going to talk some Cleveland Browns, Miami Dolphins. Everybody's amped for this game. National game. And like, oh, wait, not that one. But anyway, you'll talk about it.
Massive game with number 1 overall pick potential. 2-10 combined. Look, Cleveland hasn't scored more than 17 points in a game yet this season, and now they're getting points. It sounds absurd, but I'm back in Cleveland. Miami's defense dead last versus the run. And that's going to help Dylan Gabriel. This might be a job-defining spot for Dylan Gabriel. I haven't heard anything out of that camp, but Shedeur Sanders has been itching. And if Gabriel can't show anything yet again here against a pretty bad Dolphins D, I think Shedeur may get it. So I think that adds incentive for Dylan Gabriel to really have his best game. On the flip side, I don't think Miami's going to be able to protect Tua against Myles Garrett and his defense. The Panthers had 3 sacks against Tua last week. They have 2 sacks in their other 5 games combined, but they were able to get to Tua. So what's Cleveland going to do with their pass rushers and a lack of weaponry? Tyreek Hill, I think, I like the tight end. Obviously, Waller, made an impact, but they're not going to be able to get downfield. And that's going to be problems here against Cleveland. So -2.5, that's a good number at home. I like everything about Cleveland except the fact that they can't find a quarterback and haven't found one in 30 years, give or take. But I think enough is on the table at -3 is very doable at home.
Hey, they might even need a quarterback in this one. Quinshon Judkins could run for $150. Rico Dowdle took the 2 worst run defense in the league. 245 or 243 plus a game. And Quinshon Judkins, he looks like a great player. So, yeah, I like that. And Judkins is going to have a massive game here. Nick, you got another over and under for us. This one is an exciting game on paper. Minnesota, Philadelphia. Minnesota's still down some offensive linemen, though. What are you thinking here?
Well, first of all, I want to pile on a little bit on this Cleveland game because I'm coming around on Browns -2.5. Adam, I think there is reason to believe that we will not see Dylan Gabriel throw the ball 52 times in this game like he did last week. I have no idea why that was the script. They weren't really trailing big until late in the game. This is a massive Quinshon Judkins spot. I think we're looking at 20-plus carries, 150-plus yards. Dolphins' run defense is the worst in the NFL. Like you said, the Browns have not scored more than 17 this year. They haven't scored more than 17 points in 11 straight games. They didn't do it the last 5 games of last season. 11 in a row under 18 points. So I actually think this is an under spot as well. And part of the reason for that is if you navigate over to weather.com, guys, you look at what's going on in Cleveland on Sunday afternoon. We're getting rain. We're getting sustained 20-plus mile-per-hour winds throughout this game, gusts of up to 50 miles per hour. Chance of rain is 100% in the afternoon. Tua is not a good quarterback on the road. He's an even worse quarterback when there's wind and rain. I think this is going to be ugly. It's going to be sloppy. Cleveland wins it on the ground. Now to get to my actual game, guys, Eagles-Vikings under 44 here. This is somewhat contingent on the quarterback situation for Minnesota. I would feel a lot better about it if it is J.J. McCarthy, but even so, I still think, this Philly defense is probably a little bit underrated coming off a brutal game, but didn't have Jalen Carter last Thursday against the Giants. Jalen Carter now expected to play this week. Whether it's Carson Wentz or J.J. McCarthy, I don't expect to see a ton of scoring on the Minnesota side of things. I think this is a run-heavy approach. You limit the exposure for those quarterbacks going up against the Eagles. We see a lot of Jordan Mason. And, of course, on the other side, we know the names for the Eagles, but how do you trust this Philly offense right now, especially going up against what rates out as the best defense in the NFL by a lot of metrics? Vikings have had an extra week to prepare for this game. I think it's lower scoring. I think it probably comes down to the final possession, and I think we go well under 44, guys. I'm surprised this number isn't a little bit lower.
Man, I tell you what, Lane Johnson, the tackle for Philly, was hot. He doesn't say much, but he was making comments about how predictable their offense is. Kevin Patullo's got to go, the offensive coordinator, but they're not going to let him go, and that really helps Minnesota. But you're right on that one. But from all the comments O'Connell's making, it's going to be Carson Wentz again because he's making comments about working on McCarthy's base, which means his legs, and so probably had to get him, but it shouldn't matter. But the under is a great call on that. Adam, anything on that game before we move forward?
I was really high on the Eagles, and I'm really sour on them. They feel like a team, and maybe it's just the coordinator. Maybe you make a point.
It is.
They have new coordinators. It takes some time to kind of get to figure things out, but they're playing like a team that they just had their contract year. They just got their big payout. They won the Super Bowl. Now they're kind of just resting on their laurels, and they're just kind of sleepwalking through this regular season, assuming they're still going to get to the playoffs, which they still might. But they're not matching their potential right now.
I've got their solution. So the Browns wipe out the Dolphins 32-6. Mike McDaniel gets fired, and the next day he ends up in Philadelphia to run their offense. That would be fun. He'd actually have some players. All right, let's get to my last picker for the second round. Broncos -7 against the Giants. And what am I, nuts? The Giants just blew the doors off the Eagles. The Giants have extended rest. But I'm watching that Giants and Eagles game last week. And here's what I'm saying to myself. I'm saying, well, this blueprint is super easy how to stop Jackson Dart. You play man defense because they don't have receivers, and then you put extra bodies to get the gaps where Jackson Dart just can't run around like a lunatic. Well, guess what? Broncos play the third highest rate of man coverage. Surtain's not playing at an all-world level, but certainly better than, I like Wan'Dale Robinson, but certainly better than Wan'Dale Robinson, Jalen Hyatt. Slayton will miss this game again. So they have a perfect defense for what the Giants have been scrapping together. So they're not going to be able to do much. A little bit of Cam Scadaboo. But on the other side of the ball, the Broncos, again, the offense has been really uneven, but the Giants are poor against the run. And this is one of those games where J.K. Dobbins gets going here. And then the other place the Giants are really weak, downfield passing. Cortland Sutton gets going. So it's kind of a Sutton and Dobbins game, and Jackson Dart is going to be in a world of hurt in this one. Guys, anything on that game before we go to round 3?
I love Denver is one of my favorite picks. I just didn't pick it for this show because you had already picked it. You had first dibs, but I really like that too. I think Cam Scadaboo is an all-energy running back. Now he's playing in the altitude against a defense that ranks 8th in yards allowed per attempt. And Jackson Dart's really not doing a lot with his arm. His yards per attempt is bottom barrel, and the Broncos allow less than 8 yards per game rushing to opposing quarterbacks so far. So I think that makes for a long day for that Giants offense. And at -7, I think Broncos can score more than enough.
I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that, guys. And this is one where I think it's a good opportunity to kind of fade where the money's going. And we know about how lopsided sides have not come through. If you're on the majority position, like over 70% of the bets and the money are coming in on the Giants. They're riding high right now. Denver looked terrible last week. I get it, but I think Jim laid it out pretty well. Like, this is a game that the Denver defense is going to dominate. Like, there's not going to be running room for Jackson Dart. And of course, Denver, they didn't take the bye off the London game. If teams that don't do that, they're 13-12 ATS in their next game. It's not a massive disadvantage, right? You're a little bit above 500 there. I think there's this misnomer that if you don't take the bye, you're really up against it travel-wise. Maybe if you're going on the road after London, but home at Mile High, I think this is a great spot. Sean Payton, by the way, 22-8 ATS after his team scores 14 points or fewer in a previous game.
Jackson Dart's rushing yards on DraftKings right now are 38.5, and I know he's at least 54 in all 3 games. I do like the under on that one. There's always a chance he gets a long run in, but that's the nature of betting an under, but that looks like a really sound one. Yeah. All right, let's go to round 3. Adam, you are just picking the exciting games of the week here. You're going to go down to the bottom of the barrel. We're going to go to that Skid Row. We're going to find the Jets in Carolina. Who do you like here?
Yeah, when we were looking for games of the week, I thought it was WEAK. I misunderstood there, but yeah, Panthers Jets. I think if the Jets are going to win a game this season, it's going to be this week. The Panthers, they've been awesome at home. They're 3-0 at home. On the road, they're 0-3, and it's been ugly. They allow 4.5 yards per rush on the road, 3.1 at home. They allow about 2 more yards per pass attempt on the road than at home as well. They're scoring 14 fewer points per game on the road and allowing 15 more points per game on the road. So if New York can't get it done here, Justin Fields last week, -10 yards net passing. That's not good. Garrett Wilson not playing in this one, but he's had moments. If you look at his QB rating in the games, he have rating of 39 in one game, in 58 of another game, but in 100+ in the other games that he's played. So certainly he has it in him. I think this Carolina defense on the road up north, he can exploit that at least a little bit. The running game, they have running backs that can do things. I think they can keep it close. They're not playing as poorly as their winless record would indicate. They lost by 2 to the Buccaneers. They lost by 2 to Denver last week. They lost by 2 to the Pittsburgh Steelers. So they're within a single score of all these pretty good teams. Carolina is not a good team, especially on the road. So I'll take that 1.5 points with New York to go. If not get a win, have another heartbreaking loss, this time by 1 instead of 2.
This will sound dumb, but Justin Fields has to stop trying to be a quarterback. He's sitting in the pocket too long. There are so many places you can just take off and run for 5, 10, 20 yards, and he's not doing that. And this week, I think he probably figured out, I got no Garrett Wilson. He's going to have to run with that one. All right, let's go to Nick and I have opposite viewpoints on Texans and Seahawks. So we're going to put the gloves on here. We're going to battle it out. Nick, you get to throw the first punch.
Yeah, this doesn't happen enough on this show. I feel like we're always just in agreement. We're nodding along like, yeah, I'm with you on that. Not here, Jim. Not here. I am taking the Houston Texans to cover the 3.5 on the road at Seattle, coming out of a bye. I didn't want to go 3 for 3 on totals, but I actually really like the under 41.5 here as well. I think that would actually be my heavier play. But either way, I think we have a very fascinating matchup here. I think we get a low scoring game, and I think that bodes well for a 3.5 point underdog. I don't think these teams are all that far apart. I know Seattle is like number 1 in DVOA right now. They're the darling of the advanced metrics crowd, but this is still a team that only got to 20 last week against Jacksonville. They despite just completely dominating the trenches that entire game, they had 39 pressures on Trevor Lawrence, which is just a preposterous number. And we have a really interesting situation here, which is this ultra efficient, productive Seattle passing game going up against what might be the best defensive backfield, best pass defense in the NFL in Houston. What worries me about the Seattle side is that they are extremely reliant on one guy, Jackson Smith and Jigba. Cooper Kupp has been an okay secondary option. Torrey Horton has had a couple splash plays here and there. The running game has kind of disappeared. We're back to this weekly. All right, it's a mix of Charbonnet and Walker. Neither of them really play that well. If Derek Stingley can maybe not shut down JSN, but at least hold down Jackson Smith and Jigba, I think things get a little bit dicey for the Seattle offense. Now, the Seattle pass rush against the Houston offensive line, that is the issue here. So it's going to be tough for Houston to score points, but I think that defense is going to hold down Seattle. I think this could look, a lot like those Texans Rams, Texans Bucks, Texans Jags games early in the season. They were all one-score games. They held the Rams to 14 points in week 1. They played the Buccaneers to a 1-point game, 20-19, held Jacksonville to 17. I think Houston can make this a 20-17, 17-14 type of game, even if they don't win outright.
Yeah, what I see is I see a lot of micro differences in this game. First of all, Seattle can't run against teams that can stop the outside run, and that's Houston's weakness. Houston's very good on the interior. So if you run inside, yeah, you're not going to, like Derrick Henry, a little bit of a struggle against them. But if you run outside, that's where Kenneth Walker cooks. So this is the matchup. Like last week I said, fade Kenneth Walker. This week I actually play Kenneth Walker if you're in fantasy. He'll get to the outside, chunk plays will be there. The other thing is the weakness of the Houston defense is the middle of the field. And that's where Sam Darnold has done the majority of his damage all year. He just peppers the middle of the field, and he has been, whether it's going to his tight end, a little Cooper Kupp, Smith and Jigba gets moved all over the formation. And so I think they're okay there. You did mention the other side that, yes, that Houston offensive line is horrible. And fortunately, they played Baltimore before the bye, and everybody gets that memory of that. Baltimore can't rush the passer. They don't have run lane integrity. Well, Seattle's going to be sending players from all over the place. That's what Mike McDonald does, and that offensive line's going to be confused. And C.J. Stroud, we've seen him fold under pressure this year. That's what I'm worried about. And the run game, Seattle's not a great run defense, but this is not a matchup where Nick Chubb and Woody Marks are going to overwhelm them. So I see it a little bit differently. I think being at home, and it's not the Seahawks home Seattle edge. It's the fact they're at home. And I think that does make a little bit of a difference. Just being on your home field gives you a little bit of an advantage. So I see it that way. But Nick's got the Texans. I got the Seahawks. Adam, what do you got on that game?
I actually thought it was right down the middle, so I didn't take either side. But I do like Sam Darnold over on yards. I don't know if he's going to be able to punch it in. But Houston is one of the biggest. They really struggle against teams that have play actioned them this year. I think they were 28th in yards per attempt. Sam Darnold's number 1 in the league in pass yards per attempt, especially with play action. So I think he's going to have, the line's only, I think, 235.5. I think he's got yet another 260 game in him here. I'm staying away from the spread. I like both these teams.
Yeah, and why don't you give us your closing thought on the week, Adam?
Yeah, my closing thought. I'm piggybacking on what Nick said about if all your friends jump off a bridge, you should not jump off a bridge because, like you said, 60%. If the public backs a team, 60% of the public, just 29% that team hits. If you go up to 70%, it's 4-16. That is 20%. 4 teams this week have 70% public backing. Unfortunately, one of them is the Patriots that we both like. One of them is the Carolina Panthers, the Eagles, and your Seattle Seahawks are the other 3 that buyer beware.
Yes, fade the public is always a good method to be successful. Nick Whalen, closing thought.
Closing thoughts, guys. Nothing too crazy for me this week. I will use this time to give out just a few props, little bonus bets for the viewers this week. I'm looking at Cortland Sutton over 55.5 receiving yards. Giants have allowed the most yards to wide receivers on the season. I think this number, we're getting a discount here because of how bad the Denver offense looked last week. I think we get a bounce back. Jim and I are in agreement on that. He's gone over this number in 4 of 6 games. Jackson Dart to throw an interception. Could get that at plus 118, which I thought was kind of a wild number. I feel like that's going to be minus money at some other books, but was able to lock that in. Dylan Gabriel under 32.5 pass attempts, under 196.5 passing yards. That number is going to keep plummeting as people realize what this weather situation is going to be. He's not going to throw the ball 50 plus times for a second straight week. And then we'll give you some anytime touchdown scores to finish it out. Jim, you know how much I'm invested in Rashee Rice. Rashee Rice, anytime touchdown plus 130. Quinshon Judkins minus 120. Deebo Samuel plus 130.
Yeah, very nice on those. Sutton might do his on one catch in that game. I'm going to see that happen. That'd be beautiful. Number of good calls there. My final thought, and I can't remember if I said on this show last week or on XM, but I pointed out that the Chiefs before last week's game, before they played Detroit, I had pointed out that last year they were 15-2, and I never felt like they were a great team. I know they went to the Super Bowl, but I never thought they were great. This year, going into that game, I said, they're turning around. I saw like a lot of positive strides on their offense. I saw Pacheco starting to look explosive as a runner, and they finally gave him more work. And the odds for the Chiefs last week to win the Super Bowl were plus 900. They were 5th. Well, after that win over the Lions and Rashee Rice coming back, that plus 900 is now only plus 650, and they are tied with the Bills as the number 1 team to win the Super Bowl. So if you got those early odds, great. But the Chiefs right now, I think they look better than the second than they did last year. And that's my final thought. All right, this has been the Bookies Plus Weekly Gambling Show. Make sure you bookmark bookies.com/picks so you can check out our free picks on all sports for both NFL all year long. And remember, come back next Thursday for another edition of the show. Be profitable in week 7, everyone.